Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Arise with Sally Goodwin on this wonderful Friday morning. Let me position myself, reposition myself, should I say. I have various different meetings and things in my little spot, and so I tend to reposition my laptop and reposition myself depending on whether I'm using Facebook or Zoom or what I'm doing. And so when I come in now in the mornings, I need to reposition myself once again. And so good morning, Sal. Good morning, Sal. Apologies, I'm tired. Good morning, Jen. I'm reading my message to your message to me and repeating it. Good morning, Jen. Absolutely, my friend. I completely get that. Welcome, welcome. Lovely to see you. Lovely to see you this morning. Welcome, everybody, to Rise with Sally Goodwin on this 5th of May, Friday the 5th of May, and 2023, and it is also the 14th of Iyar, 5783. Oh, thank you, my friend. You are so faithful with the liking and the sharing. I so appreciate that. Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. It is so good to see everybody this Friday, and it is such a good time to be alive and to be thriving and to know Jesus. It is such a good time to know Jesus. Good morning, Special Sebs. Lovely to see you. Good morning, Karen. Thank you very much. Thank you. All the lights are on this morning. Load shedding just ended for us, so the lights literally just came on. So I have full light this morning, so that's possibly why. Good morning, Simone. Lovely to see you all the way from Greyton. Grace, absolutely. Grace, double grace for all of us. Morning, Martha. Good morning, Bertha. Completely understand, my friend. I look forward to you watching the replay later on. Lovely to see you all. And so good to be here this morning in this month of Iyar. So there are a few things that I wanted to share this morning, but the one thing, good morning, amazing Arena, all the way from Pringle Bay. Lovely to see you. I just love to see the Western Cape, the Cape fully represented on here in the mornings. It's just beautiful. Just a beautiful thing to see you all here in the mornings. Good morning, Conrad. Lovely to have you on in the mornings. Just such a blessing to have a man who is unafraid to show up. I know that I do have quite a couple of men who do watch my broadcasts, and but not many of them show up, you know, in terms of commenting and sort of putting up their hands and saying, I'm here. I'm not saying that's because they are too afraid to, but it is nice to have a man who's, you know, fully courageous enough to put his hand up. Courageous Conrad. I think that's what we'll call you from now on. Courageous Conrad. But welcome, everybody. It is so good to have you on here this morning. I wanted to just remind you this morning that the month of Iyar is the month of covenanting with Yahweh Nissi, Yahweh Rapha, Yahweh Jireh, God our victory, God our healer, God our provider. And the reason why I just wanted to begin by reminding you of that is because I was chatting to a prophet friend of mine yesterday, and I haven't seen her in absolute ages, like probably over a year. But what often happens when we catch up is we realize that we've been going through similar things, and that happens often with prophets because you walk a similar journey and God takes you, through similar things, because you often go through things that the body or the bride or is going to then go through. And she was saying to me, and yesterday morning I woke up and I said, "Oh wow, that's amazing, Sebs. Fantastic. Welcome to Boho. It's good to have you on. You are more than welcome to this online community." So where was I? All right. Yahweh Nissi, Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Rapha. So I yesterday morning, before I met up with this friend of mine, I was having a conversation with the Lord, and I was saying to him, because I have just had a rough couple of weeks, literally 2 weeks, just rough, just nothing, hugely majorly disastrous has happened, but it has been just hard going in the spirit, hard going. There's just been a whole lot of dynamics and a whole lot of things that have gone on, and I was also really tired because obviously from writing exams, and it felt like one thing after another, and so the last couple of weeks have just really felt like just kind of really hard going. And but often what we think is, we sort of think, oh, it's just me, it's just stuff, it's just this, it's just that. Good morning, Cynthia. And we don't stop, or we're too busy to stop and say to the Lord, what's going on here? And and yesterday morning, I was having this conversation with the Lord, and God dropped this word into my spirit, and he said, ambush. And I was like, what? And he said, ambush. Sally, you've been ambushed by the enemy. And I said, okay. And I have to be honest, that part of me went, God, are you not supposed to prevent those things from happening? Where were you in those moments? And then but I didn't have a chance to really continue the conversation. Then I met up with this prophet friend of mine, and she said to me, and we were just having a conversation, and she was saying to me, wow, Sally, the last 2 weeks have been so difficult. And she said, I feel like I've been blindsided. And I was like, wow, because blindsided sounds a lot like ambushed. I said, wow, because this morning I was talking to God, and God was like, and so we just sat there, we just processed the whole thing together. And then I said to her, what does this mean for the body? What does this mean for the people who go, because often as a prophet, you go ahead. What is the warning that needs to be put out there? And what we felt God say was this, that often we listen to a message, for example, the message about the month of Iyar. Even for me, okay, I preach a message about the month of Iyar and about God wanting to covenant with us as Jehovah Nissi, as Jehovah Rapha, as Jehovah Jireh. And we're like, yes, Lord, we want to covenant with you. What happens is the enemy comes and he tests that. He's like, oh, okay, so you want a covenant with God, but do you really have faith in God as your healer? Do you really have faith in God as your provider? Do you really have faith that God is your victory? And because he tests that, because the enemy does not want you to covenant with God. He does not want you to do that. He doesn't want you to enter into that. Now, God covenants with you. He is a covenant keeping God. The enemy cannot test God, because God is, he can't be tested by the enemy. God is a covenant keeping God. He will keep his side of the covenant always. We are the ones who are fallible. We are the ones who fail. We are the ones who fall back. We are the ones who doubt. We are the ones who fail to believe. So something happens to us financially, something happens to our health. Good morning, Renilwe. Something happens to our health, something happens to our, we feel like we lose a battle somewhere, and suddenly we question. We are like, God, where were you? Why did I not win? What happened here? Why am I sick? Why am I, why am I this? Why am I that? Why has the attack been so severe? Where were you? And it's not where was God. God was always there. It is where were we? And were we remembering our covenant with Him? His covenant with us remains absolutely irrefutable, absolutely solid, absolutely, it is rock solid, cast in stone, never moving. But our covenant with Him comes and goes depending on how we feel in any given moment in time. And so God was saying to me, Sally, it's not enough to just know that I'm covenanting with you over those things. You have to remember when the enemy comes against your finances, the first thing on your lips need to be, God, you covenanted with me, Jehovah Jireh, Yahweh Jireh, God my provider. It says in your word that that is who you are. And that is your covenant with me. And I stand on that covenant. I stand firm on that covenant. When the enemy comes against you with sickness, and not just sickness in your body, but maybe he attacks the health of your relationships. Maybe he attacks the health of something else, the health of your family. Maybe he attacks, the health of other things. It doesn't have to be physical health necessarily. Remember, God healed the water for the Israelites, and He used that to demonstrate to them that He is God, their healer. So it doesn't have to be just your physical health. It can obviously be that. Then we're so quick to be, exactly, Jen, financial health. We're so quick to be, oh my goodness, what is happening? What is this assignment against me? What is going on? Instead of being like, I stand on my covenant with God, with Jehovah Rapha, with Yahweh Rapha, with God my healer. I stand on that covenant. God, what do you need me to do in this moment? And even as a person, even as somebody who walks in the office of a prophet, even as somebody who teaches and preaches these messages, believe you me, ladies and gentlemen, the enemy tests me on my messages. I preach a message and I can guarantee you that he comes and he tests me on that exact message. He's like, oh, this is what you preach, but do you believe it? And I would love to be able to stand here and tell you that I pass every test with flying colors, and and every word that comes out my mouth I'll stand on forever after. That would be a lie. I preach these messages because I believe them, absolutely. Do I always remember them afterwards? No. That's just the honest truth. Does God need to remind me of my own messages? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I have good friends, very good friends, who have no issue reaching out to me and saying, Sally, practice what you preach. I need to be reminded. I need to be held accountable just like everybody else. And so God was like, God in his loving, gracious, merciful, wonderful way, because he loves me dearly, basically said to me, I allowed myself to be ambushed. I was not armored up. I was lulled into a false sense of security. I was resting on my laurels. I was tired. I was more than tired. I was exhausted. I had allowed myself to reach a point of exhaustion. Good morning, Estrelita. Lovely to have you here, my friend. I had allowed myself to reach a point of exhaustion, running around trying to meet a million different needs that weren't all necessarily mine to meet. I'd allowed myself to reach a point of exhaustion. The enemy, when you are tired and exhausted, when you are busy and distracted, when you have a million different things happening all at the same time, believe you me, the enemy comes then. When you are strong and rested and on top of your game, the enemy, he doesn't bother with you then. He does not play fair. He kicks you when you're down. And he waits when you're weak. And he's like, oh, right now. You see how she's allowed herself to get too busy. You see how she's allowed herself to, to get too caught up in battles that aren't hers to fight. We all do that. We all fight battles that aren't ours. We all take on giants that aren't our giants. We all do that. We all get stirred up by issues and things that aren't our issues. And instead of taking them to God and saying to God, is this my fight? Is this my giant? Is this something I'm supposed to get involved in? And then when he's like, no, that's not what I've called you to, we just step back out. We're like, no, this is, And then the enemy's like, oh, wow, okay, this is not your fight. This is where I get to take you. So I was not armored up. I had a whole lot of vulnerable places and a whole lot of weak points because I had forgotten momentarily my covenants with the Lord and my calling and my purpose and what my focus. This is a season where we need to be focused on what God has called us to focus on. Do not allow the enemy to distract you. And this is something I preach all the time and something I need to remember for myself. Just because it is good, just because it is church related, just because it is Christian, does not mean it is God's will for you. It might be God's will for somebody else. It might be God's calling on somebody else's life. It might be God's purpose for somebody else. It doesn't mean it's God's purpose for you. It might be good. It doesn't mean it's God. We need to, in this season, so importantly, we need to stick to what is God. And don't be distracted by what is good. Don't settle for what is good. Don't be so busy doing what is good that you are too exhausted to do what is God. So, some of you might have already been going through these 2 weeks of just hell. I would like to call it hell. I'm sure hell's a lot worse, but just hell. It felt like hell for me. Some of you might feel like you're in it right now. If you feel like you're in it right now, you just go back and you sit at the feet of Jesus. You just drop everything else and you sit at the feet of Jesus and you covenant with him again. Yahweh Nissi, God my victory. Yahweh Jireh, God my provider. Yahweh Rapha, God my healer. I covenant with you, God, again for all three of those things, and I am not moving from your feet until I see you come through in all three of those areas. I'm not doing another thing until I see you show up in my life in all three of those areas. And not because you haven't shown up, but because I haven't given you an opportunity to. And now I'm doing that. And for those of you who possibly have sailed through the last 2 weeks and nothing has bothered you, then know that there's a possibility that this is still coming. So let this be a warning. You go right now and you covenant with him, with God, and you will avoid that. Because often the prophets and the prophetic people go through it first, and if we can get the warning out soon enough, nobody else has to go through it. So that was the first thing that I wanted to say. The second thing I wanted to say is, if you are at all sensitive in the spirit, I can completely get that, Tishka. I completely get that. So, extra grace for homeschooling moms. Extra grace for homeschooling moms. If you're at all sensitive in the spirit, ladies and gentlemen, you might feel at the moment as if it is like, what words can I use to describe it? Like a raging waters out there, or whirlwinds, or just absolute chaos. It might, if you are very sensitive in the spirit, it might feel like chaos out there in the spiritual realm. In the spiritual realm I'm talking about now. We know it's chaos in the natural. Let's not, okay? For you, it might feel, if you're sensitive in the spirit, you might be feeling like there is chaos in the spirit. It might feel like, for me, it often feels like things are pressing in on every side. Like it's like, it feels like it's coming at me from every side. Like I step out my front door and it feels like that, okay? Okay, so firstly, I speak peace over you in the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth. Not just any peace, but the shalom peace of Jesus. The shalom peace of Jesus over each and every one of you. Secondly, I want to explain to you that what is happening in the spirit is a king is being crowned tomorrow. And it is not our king, but it is a natural king. Now, what we need to remember as South Africans is whether we like the royal family, believe in the royal family, feel any even remote tie to England, whether we can't stand the English, or not can't stand the English, but can't stand the royal family and everything it stands for, however we feel about the royal family, that is irrelevant. However we feel personally about the royal family is irrelevant. South Africa, as a member of the Commonwealth, falls under the authority of a natural king. And this natural king is being crowned tomorrow, 70 years after the crowning of his mother. 70 is a very significant number. And what he brings is not what his mother brought. Whatever you might have thought about the Queen, whatever you might have thought about her religious beliefs or lack of religious beliefs, she brought a religious stability in the spirit. I'm not going to be drawn on whether she was a believer or not. I don't know her. I'm saying she brought a religious stability in the spirit that is no longer there. And there is a shifting happening in the spiritual realm, and there is an excitement coming from the kingdom of darkness, because they feel as though there is an open door to nations through this natural king that is being crowned tomorrow. However, who do we serve? Who do we serve? Who do we serve, ladies and gentlemen? We serve the King of Glory. We serve the King of Kings. We serve the Lord God Almighty, the one true King. That is who we serve. Now, we do not, so what I find and what I struggle with, let me just be honest here, is that we in our, and this might not apply to your churches or to your intercessory groups, but we go about our business in our churches and our intercessory groups, and we seem to pay little to no attention to what is going on in the world. We might be praying God's will be done, but we pay little to no attention to what is going on in the world. Whereas intercessors in a nation that is directly impacted by what happens in a nation like England, because of the spiritual authority that the king carries, being recognized as also the head of the Church of England, we as intercessors need to be standing as watchmen on the wall for our nation. Those of us whose ancestry lies in the British Isle can also stand as watchmen on the wall for that nation, to ensure that it is not a carnal king who opens a door to the demonic realm, but it is a God, our God, who is enthroned once and for all. We do not need to be afraid We need to be excited. We do not curl up in a corner and weep and wail and gnash our teeth because we're petrified. We do not do that. We need to be excited. Change is happening. Things are shifting. The whole world is being shaken. And Satan firmly believes that this is his chance. But what have we learned about the enemy even in our short time on this earth? He always overplays his hand. He always overplays his hand. He always thinks he's going to win. I don't know, he hasn't read the whole story, clearly. He hasn't read to the end, or he just refuses to accept it. He lives in denial. I'm not 100% sure, but he always thinks he's going to win, and he always overplays his hand. And then God comes in and is just like, oh no, sorry, this victory is mine. So the chaos and the whirlwind that you are picking up in the spiritual realm is the demonic realm trying to tell us that we are losing. Trying to convince us that the world is falling apart. The world in the natural might very well be falling apart. We know that it's going to eventually. But in the spirit, our God has everything completely under control. However, having said that, as I've said before, he co-labors with us, and he is waiting for us to stand in our authority, the authority he has given us, and listen for his words and his instructions and what he is calling us to say. Now, if you remember, a while back, I said to you that we are counting the Omer. And we are on the, let me just double check here. We are on the 29th day today. At nightfall this evening, we move on to the 30th day of the count of the Omer. In 10 days' time, we celebrate when Jesus went back to heaven, when Jesus went up to be seated at the right hand of his Father. And remember, I said to you, Psalm 67, that the Jewish people read Psalm 67 every day for the counting of the Omer. I want to read Psalm 67 now. In light of the coronation that's happening tomorrow, in light of the chaos that some of us are experiencing in the spirit realm, I want you to, wherever you are, just let Psalm 67 wash over you. God, be merciful and gracious to us, and bless us and cause his face to shine upon us and among us. Selah. That your way may be known upon earth, your saving power, your deliverances, and your salvation among all nations. Let the peoples praise you, turn away from their idols, and give thanks to you, O God. Let all the peoples praise and give thanks to you. Oh, let the nations be glad and sing for joy, for you will judge the peoples fairly and guide, lead, or drive the nations upon earth. Selah. Let the peoples praise you, turn away from their idols, and give thanks to you, O God. Let all the peoples praise and give thanks to you. The earth has yielded its harvest, in evidence of God's approval. God, even our own God, will bless us. God will bless us, and all the ends of the earth shall reverently fear him. God will bless us. Not maybe, not might, not possibly, not if he feels like it. God will bless us, and all the ends of the earth shall reverently fear him. That is Psalm 67. That is what the Orthodox Jewish people, some of the Messianic Jewish people, will have been reciting in Hebrew every day for this counting of the Omer. Imagine how powerful that is, that has been going up into the spiritual realm every single day over this time. Last night, I lead a group of international prophets, and we meet every 2 weeks. It's affiliated with, we're affiliated with Emma Stark and her prophetic team. Sorry, I'm just looking for the book of Daniel, which seems to be eluding me at this point. And God gives us word to prophesy over nations. And last night he was speaking. He gave me a word. Well, not last night, but over the last little while, he gave me this word, and he gave me. We've been prophesying over the United States, and he gave me this word for the United States. But he actually was speaking to me from that it wasn't just for the United States, that it was actually for it could be applied to different nations on the earth. Some different sections of it could be applied to different nations on the earth. And what was amazing about it was that it was calling forth the remnant. And so as international prophets, we stood together last night and we called forth the remnant. And it was so powerful. But it was from Daniel 2. And I want to just remind you, this message is going in a completely different direction to the message I originally intended to bring this morning. So we will, let's just see where Holy Spirit goes. But I wanted to just remind you of this. At Daniel chapter 2, and we know the story. We know the story of Daniel chapter 2, where Nebuchadnezzar has this dream, and then he goes to his magic men and his wise men, and he wants them to interpret the dream, and nobody knows how to, and so he gets completely beside himself and angered, and he tells them that if they can't interpret the dream, that they will all be destroyed. And obviously Daniel and his companions are amongst the wise men of Babylon, because they have been brought in from, when Babylon took over Israel. And so they're also going to be destroyed now because they're part of the wise men. And so Daniel asks the question of, why is this happening? And then he says, no, wait, give us a chance to interpret the dream. And Daniel goes to his companions and he tells them what's going on. And then they go and they desire and request mercy of the God of heaven concerning the secret. They go before the God of heaven and they ask God to reveal the secret of the king, which we can interpret as, leaders, kings and leaders, so that they could find mercy. And it says in Daniel chapter 2, verse 20, this is Daniel's prayer, and this is what the prayer that we prayed last night. Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. He changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals the deep and secret things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. I thank you and praise you, O God of my fathers, who has given me wisdom and might, and has made known to me now what we desired of you, for you have made known to us the solution to the king's problems. This is what Daniel did. There was an issue with Nebuchadnezzar. He was about to destroy a whole lot of people because they couldn't do what he wanted them to do. What does Daniel do? He goes to God. What does he say to God? He says to God, you are the one who changes times and seasons. You are the one who puts kings in place and removes kings. You are the one who has the solutions to these things. And you are the one who is prepared to share your solutions with us so that we can bring the solutions onto the earth. So why, might I ask, in all humility, is God's church on the earth not seeking his solutions? And so the word last night was a harsh word on the church. Globally, really. And a command to the prophets to call forth the remnant. To call forth the remnant, a people who are not afraid for their voices to be heard. Wait, I will read that. This is not the place to release the whole word, but I will just read that bit. I heard the Lord say, this is me speaking, I heard the Lord say, as I have done throughout the history of humanity, I will raise up a remnant. I will raise up those who are unafraid to make their voices heard. I will raise up those who will set their foreheads like flint and war for their nations. I will raise up those whose hearts recognize me as Lord, and they will be my people, and I will be their God, and they will return to me wholeheartedly. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom will rise against kingdom, but my kingdom will be exalted. Lift up your heads, you gates. Be lifted up, you ancient doors, and let me, the King of glory, come in. My remnant will stand in the gap. My remnant will be the watchman on the walls. My remnant will be able to soften some, but not all of the reckoning. Thus my command goes out to my prophets to call forth the remnant. So remember, on Wednesday we spoke about, do your hearts burn for Jesus, or are they dull? And as far as your church goes, is your church going to open wide its gates and experience the full and weighty presence of the Trinity? Or is it going to have an Ichabod moment where the glory of the Lord will full and finally depart? Because God is calling forth a remnant. And when his remnants stand up and move forward, the rest will be left behind. God is calling forth a remnant out of the church. And when I say church in this instance, I don't mean church buildings. So please, there are many people who love Jesus who aren't in church buildings. So don't, when I speak about the church, please don't immediately in your brain see church buildings. I'm speaking about the global church, as in people who love Jesus, whether they are in a church or not in a church, the way we view church. God is calling forth a remnant, people who are willing to lay their lives down for Jesus. And I find that in the Western church, if we would like to call ourselves the Western church, we're the African church, but we tend to align ourselves with the Western church. We so easily say, yes, of course we would lay our lives down for Jesus, because the chances of physical martyrdom are unlikely for now, where we live. Laying your life down for Jesus doesn't have to look physical. It doesn't have to look physical. In the Gospels, there's that story. I don't have the scriptures in front of you right now, but in front of me right now. But in the Gospels, there is that story where those men come to Jesus and they say, "What do I need to do to follow you?" And God says to the one man, "Leave everything and follow me." And the man says to him, "I need to bury my father." And We assume that his father is dead and he needs to go and bury him, like before he follows Jesus. So, knowing what we do about Jewish burial customs, that the people need to be buried immediately, etc., etc., we think that Jesus is being very unreasonable, saying, no, let the dead bury the dead. You need to follow me immediately. But it wasn't that at all. That man's father had not yet died. The understanding, the Jewish understanding of that, what happened there with Jesus and that person, was that person was waiting for his father to die so that he could receive his inheritance. His father had not died yet. What he was saying to Jesus is, when my father dies, there is an inheritance due to me. I want to wait for my father to die to receive my inheritance before I follow you. It wasn't that Jesus was being unreasonable and saying, no, I will not allow you to grieve your father. What he wanted was, he wanted to first get what was due him before he followed Jesus. He was worried that somebody else would get what he was owed before he followed Jesus. And Jesus was saying, you need to lay that down. That needs to be less important to you than me. I need to be the most important thing to you, not some potential inheritance, not some possible thing that could still be coming. I need to be the most important thing to you, but you are not willing to walk away. It's the same thing with the rich young ruler. When, many people since that story have thought that God was telling them to sell everything and follow Jesus. And in some instances, God was telling them that. But for the rich young ruler, it's about our hearts. God knows what we hold into in our hearts. And Jesus knew what was in his heart. Jesus knew that for the rich young ruler, it was his riches that stood between him and Jesus. That's why Jesus said to him, you need to sell everything and follow me. For that young man who wanted to wait for his father to die first, Jesus knew that it was his inheritance that stood between him and Jesus. Jesus knew what was in his heart. A remnant, the people who will be in the remnant, are the people who, if Jesus stood in front of them today and said, I need you to come with me now, they would be, I'm here. And if someone stood next to them and said, what about this, what about that, they would be like, that means nothing. That means nothing. Status means nothing. Title means nothing. Influence means nothing. Politics. I'm talking about church politics, not politics. We need to be in the world, but not of the world. We need to know what is going on so that we can intercede and pray and stand in the gap without being drawn in and becoming a part of it. And the closer we stand to Jesus, and the more we are tied into that covenant with God, the more deeply we have covenanted with Yahweh Nissi and Yahweh Rapha and Yahweh Jireh, the easier it is to be a watchman on the wall and not be drawn in. The easier it is to be part of the remnant and to say to Jesus, there is nothing worth more than you. as we watch God's remnant rise up on the earth, and we will watch it happen. We will be surprised by who is in it and who is not. I'm trusting that each and every one of us, part of this online community, will be there with bells on, shields up, swords raised high, ready to do battle for our Savior, who gave it all up for us. Ladies, that took a completely different direction to the direction I was planning to go in. The Holy Spirit clearly had a completely different idea. So we will leave that there for this morning. And next Wednesday, I will continue. Next Wednesday, we are going to look at, we're just going to do a refresher of what the new wineskin actually looks like. And instead of going backwards to look at what has happened previously in the church, we are going to look at what was prophesied in Revelation. We're going to look at the 7 churches and see what Jesus said about what the new wineskin would look like. So, bless you, love you, have a wonderful weekend, stand in the gap, stand in the gap. Be excited. God is moving. God is moving, ladies. Be excited. Love you all. Bless you all. See you next Wednesday.